And for analysis on the impact and consequences of the Russia-EU-US sanctions standoff, we're joined by Charles Ortel, Managing Director at Newport Ventures. Charles, it's always great to have you back on the show.
Thanks for having me on.
Charles, let's look at some of the figures involved here. Last year, exports of European agricultural products to Russia accounted for 10% of total exports, about $15 billion worth, and about $1.6 billion worth of meat products. This is bound to hurt the EU. How soon before they really start to feel the pinch?
Well, I think on the food side, actually, it'll have an impact. It's a lot less material on the food side, frankly, than on the energy side.
Well, on the food side, big opportunity for other countries to step in, especially from South America, Brazil and Chile, for example. Who do you think is best poised to benefit from this?
I think you're right to pick on Brazil. That's a good one. The other countries in South America might jump on it as well. Perhaps even some countries in Asia might be able to get, I mean, China is a major supplier of food into the U.S.
Well, the EU plans to hold talks with some of these countries in South America, particularly Brazil and Chile, and to try and dissuade them from filling in the gap left behind from the ban on their products. Do you think the EU could pressure others not to fill the gap? How likely are Latin American countries to, say, appease the EU desires and forsake these billions of dollars that are at stake?
I think to be charitable to the EU, I don't think we can characterize the EU at any moment in time as a towering pillar of strength on any initiative, frankly. So I don't think they intimidate anybody, and I doubt that any of these rising nations will rush to vote.
But is it intimidation tactics that you think will be employed here? Is it going to be a carrot or a stick type of method of persuasion? Will they threaten frosty relations, or could they perhaps entice them with some better trade deals if they don't fill the gap with Russia?
See, I don't think they have the whip hand. The problem throughout Europe is that their populations are slow growing, too indebted, too deficit ridden. They have no military. Whereas these nations you talk about are the growth plays in the world. They're the ones everyone's trying to get.
So the EU and the US, you think, are powerless to dissuade these other countries from jumping in and taking the leftovers and filling the void? I
think in theory they're very powerful, but given the track record, particularly since January 20, 2009, of wavering in the US, dithering and to break down really in unanimity in the US-led structure, I just don't see Russia being intimidated very much by this.
But we're not so much talking about Russia being intimidated. We're talking about the other countries not cooperating and not taking advantage of this gap and supplying their goods to make up for the US and European agricultural products that now Russia's going to get from elsewhere. Is there any leeway that the US, Canada, Norway, Australia can perhaps use to get these countries to go along with the sanctions?
Well, I think if the United States could provide the amount of energy that Russia could cut off to Europe, then yes, but the United States can't do that. Nobody can do that. Russia's got the whip hand on energy till 2016 at the earliest. So, you know, all this talk about what you might do, I mean, it's getting cold in Europe right now. And if, you know, Russia plays that card, what are people going to do?
Right. Well, we're focusing more on the food imports here. But let's talk a little bit about the currency situation, because some people are saying that this, not right now, but in the long run, could lead to the demise of the US dollar as a global currency. If this pushes Russia towards a stronger coalition with the BRICS countries, which have been in discussions of forming an alternative global reserve currency, that in the very long run, this could be very detrimental to the US dollar. What are your thoughts?
I absolutely agree with that. In fact, I pointed that out in June of last year, that is just a golden opportunity for whatever group of nations wants to get together, create a new bank, issue securities in that bank that pay interest based not just on fiat currencies, maybe tied to gold or energy or something. That's just sitting right out there.
Well, in the meantime, we've got a report out from Danske Bank in Denmark, and they're saying that this is just too debilitating for all parties involved, and that these sanctions will last for a maximum of 3 months before somebody blinks in this game of chicken. Do you think that's a likely scenario?
I absolutely think that's a likely scenario. As I said, I mean, you know, the opportunity to sell into Russia and replace Europe isn't really that big. On the other hand, the opportunity to get involved with Russia building out its infrastructure to sell energy east into India and into China, now that's massive. That's hundreds of billions of dollars of equipment, of labor, of all sorts of stuff that could be used to construct the infrastructure in Europe. And I think Germany's looking at that, and there are reports that Germany's in secret talks with Russia to basically jump first and capture that opportunity, leaving their European brethren behind.
Wow, the plot thickens. Secret talks between Germany and Russia. It's quite a theory. Let's see if it pans out. Thank you so much, as always, Charles Ortel, Managing Director at Newport Ventures.